The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. This episode is sponsored by the OP, also known as USAopoly.
The Dice Tower, episode 654, Unassigned Numbering Plan.
Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them.
In today's show, we muddle through a bit as we adjust to gaming during a pandemic. We'll cover a new app and answer a few quick questions. I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Mandy Hutchinson.
Mandy, it's always wonderful to see you.
You too. Lots going on.
How are you holding up?
It's funny. I actually enjoy spending time at home, but it's the outside stuff like, it's hard, hearing all the stories and what's happening. So I'm trying to keep busy, mainly with Animal Crossing. Yes, I said it. Animal Crossing. And how about you, Suzanne? Or what are you doing?
Well, I also am playing Animal Crossing and thoroughly enjoying it, but not to the level I think you are, Mandy.
I've actually had some emails. People were like, we heard you play. What are you doing? And I know everyone's going to be like, this is about board games. I promise I'll make it very quick. I've started remodeling the island. I'm going for a very cute theme. So if you come visit, there is a lot of pink on my island. I got to keep in line with the cute theming I'm going with. So things are going well. Very sparkly, very fun, very exciting. That's all I'm going to say.
I think it's great because I think we're all looking for whatever little happiness or peace or relaxation that we can get right now. And hey, Animal Crossing is pretty chill. Like, that is a great way to just kind of have a pleasant time. And I think we could all use a little pleasantness right now.
Absolutely. And I have that. And then on the other end, if I'm like, I'm tired of the cute, I just go play The Witcher for a little bit. See? So I balance it out. We're fine.
That's quite the balance. So, y'all, we are going to have a somewhat short show today because we are adjusting to this remote situation. The great thing is that there are so many digital ways to play games with each other, and Mandy and I have a plan to actually start playing with each other digitally more than we ever have before, which really, Mandy, we should have done before because we'd have fun doing it.
Right, I know.
We have been streaming app plays on the Dice Tower's YouTube channel through Apptastic, trying to up our production of that show just because it's fun, if nothing else. But we're kind of in this weird gap where it's like, wait a minute, we're not getting together with friends and playing a bunch of games. What do we do for the podcast?
Exactly.
So let's call this the transition episode between the pandemic podcast, the pre-pandemic and post-pandemic podcast. So we will do our best. Thank you for sticking with us. We really, everyone, we hope that you are safe and healthy and comfortable as you can be in this time. We're thinking of you. We are so glad that we can be here and talk about games still because it's a great distraction for us. So thank you for making us part of your gaming life. With that, Mandy, let's just jump into a few games, huh?
Yeah, sounds like a plan.
So, what have you been playing lately?
Caught me there with some Jelly Bellies in my teeth. Sorry.
Oh my goodness. I love how in between the transition from our intro segment to this discussion, we talked about Animal Crossing and hybrid flowers.
And all this while I eat Jelly Bellies.
Yeah, I think the Dice Tower, our episodes will now be Animal Crossing episodes. I kid because I love. I'm going to open it up with a 2-player abstract game called BLOCK.BLOCK. Now, when you look at this title, it's all capital letters across the board, and it's block, period, block with no space. BLOCK.BLOCK. It looks very chunky in the title alone.
Yes.
This is designed by Roy Nambu, and the art or graphic design is by Tanago, and it's published by Pen and Dice. This is a game out of Japan. In BLOCK.BLOCK, there are Tetris-shaped 3D wooden pieces. So you get the little Z shape or the L shape or straight shapes, that kind of thing. And they come in light wood for one player and dark wood for another player. One little twist is some of the straight pieces have the ends painted the opposite color. So your main body may be light wood, but then the ends are painted dark, which comes into play very much so. It is honestly diabolical, and I love what it does to the game. Ultimately, in BLOCK.BLOCK, your goal is, at the end of the game, is to have the most of your color showing from a top-down view of the board. The gameplay is pretty simple. All you're doing is, on your turn, is you take a piece from your pool and place it on the board. There are just a couple of placement rules related to that. You cannot play the same piece that your opponent just played. You can't exactly overlay another piece. So if the L is laying flat, you can't put another L exactly on top of it that covers it up wholly. That's against the rules. Pretty predictably, you can't leave gaps underneath, so you have to be fully supported. And that's pretty much it. Now, if you cannot place a piece legally according to those rules, you've lost. But most of the time, the games go to the end where you're counting pieces from the top down. And because you're counting pieces from the top down and you've got your color and you've got some pieces that show the opponent's color on the end, that can make some interesting decisions as you go, especially because you can't overlay exactly, especially because you cannot play the same piece in succession. Those restrictions actually make the game really challenging in a surprising way. And honestly, Mandy, that's really all there is to the game. The wood is really nice, and it's nice to hold these really chunky pieces. This is not a dexterity game, really. The pieces are very chunky and very solid, so it's not a fiddly kind of situation. And you just find as you're placing the pieces out, you're trying to think ahead. You're looking at what your opponent has left. You're trying to figure out, okay, if I go there, they're going to go there. It's almost chess-like sometimes as you're figuring out which move your opponent is likely to make and cover up yours. So what move can you make to minimize that effect is something that you're definitely thinking through as you're playing. It's very simple. It's very relaxing to play, but it's challenging. It is a duel. And that is all the stuff I love in a two-player abstract game. So BLOCK.BLOCK definitely is a winner for me. I've really, really enjoyed it. Now, oftentimes I talk about games out of Japan or Taiwan or Korea that are a little harder to get. BLOCK.BLOCK, there's a retailer that is specializing in importing games from Japan to the United States called Big Cat Games. Mm-hmm. And they recently ran a Kickstarter for BLOCK.BLOCK, and so they're importing these. So this is one that you should be, if it sounds interesting, this is one you should be able to get. I've been talking about BLOCK.BLOCK on my social media a little bit, and somebody asked, well, that sounds a lot like Roomis or Blockist 3D. Have you ever played Roomis or Blockist 3D, Mandy?
I'm familiar with Blockist, but no, I actually have not played it.
You can kind of imagine you can kind of imagine Blockist, but anyway, this is different from Roomis. The pieces do look similar in terms of the shape and the structure of them, but the restrictions in play are completely different. And Roomis is much more of a puzzle game where you're trying to fit shapes into a certain pattern kind of thing. And this is much more of a head-on duel kind of game. So for people who look at it and go, well, that looks a lot like Blockist 3D, it's a totally different game. And randomly, one little nice touch, if you open the box and you look down, you've got all these big chunky wood blocks in a very compact box, as often is the case out of that market. There is a pattern printed on the bottom of the box that shows you how to repack all the pieces so they fit perfectly.
I like that. That's cool.
It's such a little detail, and it helps so much. It's a delight when you open it up and you realize, you're like, that's going to make everything so easy. And it does. So BLOCK.BLOCK, if you like two-player abstract games, this one is definitely worth a place on your shelf. I really enjoy it. And you can actually get this one, which is exciting too.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, because, it sounds really fun. It sounds like one that I think people would enjoy. Anything where you can... I myself like chunky pieces in my games that, you just want to grab onto and just, I don't know. And I'm not one to play a lot of kind of dexterity type games, but I do like building games or games where I have to place, like polyomino games and things like that. So I think this could be one that a lot of people, could just slip into their collection. It would get played quite a bit. So now we're going from a game that has a similar feeling. So, you're saying it's like relaxing, but your brain hurts a little bit. Well, guess what? It's not going to get any better in Tranquility, which is the game that I'll be talking about. So I'm going to start off, preface this by saying that I have only played this game through Tabletopia, but I do own the physical copy. So going forward, due to the situation, I will probably be playing a lot of these games that way. So I'm reviewing it based on that. So please keep that in mind as I talk about the game, and I may not be talking about components as much. So Tranquility is designed by James Emerson. Art is by Tristan Rawson, and it's published by Board Game Hub. It's 1 to 5 players, and it plays in about 15 to 20 minutes. I actually couldn't find a price online for this on the Canadian site or the American site, so I'm not 100% sure what it's going to retail for. Hopefully on the next show, I will be able to have a more round number, or precise number, I should say, for you. So Tranquility is a cooperative card game, and basically we're trying to fill the sea with islands, which are cards with numbers on them. And we're basically trying to, I mean, that's really what it is, and guide the ship home before basically player runs out of cards. Here's the kicker in this game. You have to play it in complete silence. We're going to talk about that afterward. So just a basic overview. Each player gets 5 cards. You're trying to place the cards out on this. I guess when I saw it being played at Aircon, it was on a mat, but you could play it without the mat. And it's in rows. So I can't remember how many cards in a row. I think it's 5 cards in a row, 5 by 5 or something to that effect. And you're placing the cards in sequential ascending order. So the first row would be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you start over on the left on the next row, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or 6, 10, 12, 20, something along those lines. So they don't have to be...
They don't have to be exactly sequential, but they just have to get bigger.
Exactly. So that gives you an idea. So the cards are numbered from 1 to 80. So you do have a lot of cards to play with. And basically on a turn, you have an option of putting a card out anywhere you want. It doesn't have to be adjacent. We're going to talk about adjacency in a moment, but you can put it anywhere on the board as long as you're following that rule. Or you can decide to discard 2 cards because sometimes you just don't have good cards to play with. Here's the kicker. When you place a card beside another card, you have to keep in mind that whatever the difference is between those cards, you have to discard that many cards. Now, you're going to draw back up to 5 at the end of your turn, but that's a lot of cards, especially if you have some good ones you want to play later. Now, if you have to get rid of more than what you have, you cannot place that card out. If it's placed between 2 cards and one has a lower number of difference, that's how many cards you will discard. Okay, so there's a bit of leeway there. If you cannot place a card at all, game is over. We all have lost. Okay? Something else I want to talk about too, we also have to get out a start card and we also have to get out a finish card. If you get the start card in your hand, that has to go out right away. So there's no hanging on to that. It needs to go out. When you place the start card out, I think it's 8 cards collectively that you have to discard. So I could discard 2, and let's say Suzanne was playing, she could get rid of 3, and we had another player, they could get rid of, another 3, but it has to be a total of 8 to be discarded. And then that's how many cards you start with for your next round until the end of your turn that you draw up. So the same happens for the finish tile, but you can't put that out till all the tiles have been put out. The game ends, when all the tiles are out. So I have yet to win this game.
Really?
Oh, no. Played it again last night, and I think we did even worse. So we had 6. Oh, it was bad. We literally left the whole middle row empty and then realized, oh, wait a second. We can't put any card here that will work. It was just too big of a job.
Wah, 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 wah.
So we ended with like -6 points or something, which I think is only a point more than what we ended up with. So it's tough. It's very pretty. So even playing it on Tabletopia, the colors are gorgeous. When I saw it in person, the mat, I'm not a mat person, but honestly, I think the mat is something you might want to have with this. It just adds to the vibe and the feeling of the game. The cards are a decent size. So they're kind of like a coaster, like a square coaster size. I guess that would be a good way to describe it. And what I liked is the number is on both sides of the tile. So if you're looking at it upside down, I'm putting air quotes there, upside down, technically you can still see the number right side up because they have it on both sides of the tile, on the top and the bottom. So you can read it from both ends, which I thought was pretty cool. And they've doubled the color. So against the color, so you can contrast the numbers. Now on screen, it's a bit hard to read just because of the numbers and the pixels on the computer, but the actual cards are easy to read in person. This game I found very difficult not to speak. I'm sorry. I think I cheated in all my games because I'm like, oh, these cards are so bad. I'm like, does that count? Is that cheating? Well, it does say no talking. So we kind of like house ruled it that you could sigh and huff and puff about your cards, but you just couldn't really talk about your cards. So I think people may find that difficult. I'm not saying it's not something you can't do. You just might find it hard. So it's still hard regardless. Even if you're talking, you still have that struggle with this game. So I don't necessarily know if I like the whole complete silence, but maybe as if you want to play on a harder level, this is what you can do. That's kind of how I feel about the no talking, but hey, to each their own. Some people may like that. Other than that, we enjoyed the game quite a bit. It's like a puzzly type game. We all had a good laugh. I mean, we all worked together, and yes, there were moments, I can't believe you put that out, but it was all in jest. It's just that frustration, but you're enjoying the frustration as you're playing because you're trying to figure out that puzzle, and it plays in a short amount of time. Like, we played back-to-back a couple times, and it's easy in that sense, but hard to win. And that's a good thing because now you want to play it again. So Tranquility for me was a win. I enjoyed it. And I know cooperative is not for everybody, but I think it's in a short enough time frame that it works.
Well, I've only gotten to play it once with you on Tabletopia, and I am not a cooperative game fan typically, but where Tranquility falls emotionally for me is more in line with a game like The Mind.
Right.
Which in very ways, in a lot of ways, there's some similarities where you're trying to play in ascending order and there's no communication and that kind of thing. So I also enjoyed my one play of it in terms of a cooperative game when I don't typically enjoy that. And maybe the lack of communication helps with that. It's just you can't alpha game it, and people make choices or decisions based on what's in their hand. And sometimes they don't have a choice. Sometimes when we played in our one game, the two players, you and Ashley, played in the spots that completely blocked my two plans.
Oh, absolutely.
My two options, I was completely blocked. So then I had to do a discard thing, which is fine. We're working as a team. Obviously, but that was actually interesting from a gameplay perspective to me, and I enjoyed it. So I also know you can play it solo.
Yeah, so I didn't, but Ashley played it solo, and she said she really enjoyed it as well.
And this totally seems like the kind of game I would play solo. So I'll have to look up if I can. I haven't seen it for sale in the US.
And I had a hard time finding a price, Canadian or US. I searched a couple online stores and I did not see it. So
because it was a Kickstarter, right?
I believe so. And I picked it up at Aircon in the UK. So it just may not have hit here yet, but I believe it's a coming soon. I'm hoping by the next podcast, I will have a bit more concrete information for everybody.
Ooh, yeah. And because it is gorgeous too. That art style.
It's beautiful.
Choice. I love it.
Absolutely. So that is Tranquility.
And we are actually going to wrap up with games played with Gloomy Graves.
Ooh.
Which go from these beautiful scenic islands to graveyards. Alrighty, there we go.
Okay.
Gloomy Graves is a little card game designed by Jeffrey D. Allers. The art is by David Sislagi, and it's published by Renegade Games. This is a game in which you are gravediggers in a fantasy world, and you're working to create grave sites for different fantasy creatures like unicorns and dragons and pixies, that kind of thing. The theme is a little odd. I'm just going to say it. It is what it is.
Okay.
We'll move on. So that's the theme. It's a fantasy. It's a theme about grave digging, but it is set in this fantasy world, which I think softens kind of the grimness of the theme to some degree.
Right.
Basically, each card looks like a domino. They're elongated, thin, rectangular cards, and the top square, there's two squares, and they'll have maybe a pixie on one side and a dragon on the other side, or a gravedigger and a pixie, or a gravedigger and a unicorn, and dragon, that kind of thing. There are two graveyards that you're going to be working on. There's a communal graveyard in the center of the table that everybody contributes to. And then there's your personal graveyard that is ultimately going to be a 3x3 grid. Never can exceed that 3x3 grid, which is critical to gameplay. On your turn, you're going to have a hand of cards. On your turn, all you're going to do is place a card in your personal graveyard and then place one in the communal graveyard. You may choose to score, and then you draw back up to your hand. When you place in your personal graveyard, you can put things adjacent and cover things up and that kind of thing, but you can never, ever, ever exceed that 3x3 grid. In the communal graveyard, you must cover up one and exactly one square of a card that's already in the tableau. The additional building thing is that grave diggers are wild, which we'll talk about in a second, but you can only cover up grave diggers with other grave diggers. You can't cover up a grave digger with like a pixie or something like that. Ultimately, what you're trying to do is get contiguous area built up. So you want as many blue areas as possible and then score them. Scoring, you can choose to score. It's an optional thing, because what's going to happen is when you have, say you have 4 blue squares all adjacent to each other in your personal graveyard, and then you play a card to the communal area and you join a blue card there, and there's 10. When you place your card, you've added the 10th blue one to an area there. You add up your communal blue squares to your personal graveyard blue squares, and then you have 14. Well, now there's all these scoring cards, and so you look. Oh, there's one that if you have 12 blue 12 blue squares, pixies, whatever, you get 6 points. So then you can choose to say, okay, I'm going to score blue, and you take that one off. Now, maybe there's one that says it's 15 blue pixies, and you get 10 points. Well, wait a minute. You only got 14 pixies this time. Do you wait a turn? Do you wait around and push your luck that you could actually get more pixies somehow so that you can get the higher points? That's your choice. The critical thing is you can only score each character creature type once per game. So if I go for a quick pixie score, because I've got like 10, whatever the minimum is, I'm done. Even if I have a giant pixie block later, I can't get a higher score. So there's an interesting even push your luck element to the game on that front as well. And then at the end of the game basically ends when somebody scores all the different types of creatures or when the draw deck is done. The game does scale for player count by removing certain cards depending on your player count, which is really, really nice. I like games that scale smartly that way. And whoever has the most points wins. There's also some bonus cards. So if you've scored 3 different types of creatures, you get some bonus points. If you've scored 4 different types of creatures, you get bonus points, that kind of thing. It's very abstract, ultimately. You're just playing cards, trying to build up big areas of a specific color or type, and choosing when to score it. I will just say the theme is very odd to me. Because it is such an abstract game, it definitely is a game where you could have put a number of different themes on it, I think, and it would have worked just as well. I think the theme is unique. Mm-hmm. I think the fantasy setting definitely softens it and makes it more abstract and things like that. The illustrations are cute, but like the unicorn square is 3 dead unicorns on their side with like X's over their eyes. Like it's very cartoony.
Okay.
But, like, the pixies look like 5 pixies that were, like, squashed with a hand, all smushed together. Oh. Again, it's not gory. It's comical and cartoony. But it's just kind of an interesting theme. Huh. It works. Thematically, it works. Right. But I will just say it was not my favorite theme. It's not offensive. It's not... You could play this with kids who aren't super sensitive. That kind of thing. But... maybe not my favorite. I kind of wish the game came in a different theme because I really like the game. So the gameplay itself is really good. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Jeffrey D. Allers also designed games like Piece of Cake or New York Slice, Gunkamono, Citrus. These are good games. So Jeffrey D. Allers, really solid designer. Not surprised that I like this game from him. But really enjoy the gameplay. That 3x3 limitation within your grid is agonizing in all the right ways. Even the limitation of how you build into the communal, it's so clever because after you score a big area, you actually want to break up that area to make it harder for other people. But because you can only cover up one square, you can't break it up and then somebody come back in and rejoin it because of the way the limitations work. So it's very, very clever. It does have a bit of a take that feel because you are cutting each other off intentionally or unintentionally. So I wouldn't call it a very aggressive game or things like that, but your plans can be thwarted. And that's where that push your luck thing comes in with scoring. Take the lower points that you're guaranteed now or push your luck that somebody's going to thwart your plans before you get to your turn again. And all of these are gameplay decisions that I find fun and interesting. The one thing I'm unsure about really is the bonus scoring, because it feels a bit like the rich get richer. Hey, if you manage to score 3 different creature types, you get more points. If you score 4 different creature types, you get even more points. So I don't love the bonus scoring. I actually should try to play it without the bonus scoring just to see if I like it better with flat scoring without the bonuses. I'm not quite sure how that works out. But overall, the puzzly gameplay of building your own tableau, building a communal tableau, all of that worked really, really well in Gloomy Graves. Yes, I wish it had a different theme personally, but the gameplay itself is rock solid, very interesting, and I like it. And it's an inexpensive card game for what it's worth, and definitely something you can play with a wide range of players.
So yeah, it sounds, I mean, I'm not adverse to the theme, but I also kind of like that kind of,
Absolutely.
But I get it, what you're saying. Like, it just might not be for everyone. And then you always have to worry, right? If someone kind of looks at it and goes, it's not for me, but it's actually a really good game. So I kind of get where you're going with that. But yeah, I could see how it can be potentially off-putting for some people. For me, I find it, I don't know if that's wrong to say mildly humorous, because I think I see where it was going, but I don't know. But I understand the point about that.
No, and I think your point is really well taken too. You like horror movies. Right. I actively dislike horror movies. So you with more of the gothic spirit and kind of thing, absolutely. This theme would definitely more appeal to you. It's definitely not gory or dark. Like, it's just unusual.
Unusual. There you go. It's like a Beetlejuice unusual.
So that's Gloomy Graves.
I have it on my shelf. I'm looking forward to try it. It's in a purple box, right? The main color is purple? Yeah, okay. It caught my eye, so I'm curious to check it out. So thank you for that explanation. Have you checked out the Ops Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle? In this cooperative deck building game, the forces of evil are threatening to overrun Hogwarts Castle, and it's up to 4 students to ensure the safety of the school by defeating villains and consolidating their defenses. Players take on the role of a Hogwarts student: Harry, Ron, Hermione, or Neville, each with their own personal deck of cards that's used to acquire resources. By gaining influence, players add more cards to their deck in the form of iconic characters, spells, and magical items. Only by working together will players be able to defeat all of the villains, securing the castle from the forces of evil. You can get Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle at your local game store or online today.
And now let's look at the digital side of board gaming with Tap That App.
Well, this next thing that we're going to talk about is appropriate. Apps, well, it's a real thing. So we're going to jump into a fun one, Sagrada. So Sagrada is designed by Adrian Adamescu and Daryl Andrews. Art is by Adrian Adamescu, Daryl Andrews, and Peter Wokin, and it's by Floodgate. Additionally, Direwolf, I believe, is the one that has put this app out. I'm going to throw it over to Suzanne to give us talk us through how the game's played.
Sure, and Sagrada has been a huge hit in the gaming world. People love it. Thematically, you're making stained glass windows, and it's a dice drafting game where you get all of these beautiful, translucent, shiny, 6-sided dice. And basically, what you get is everybody gets their own personal board, and you're dice drafting. And when you get a die, you have to place it on your window. There are some places on boards that have a color on it, or some places on a board that have a number on it, and you must match. So when you have to place a 6 on a 6, you have to place a red die on a red square, that kind of thing. But you start on a side, on an edge, and then you have to build out from that starting location. That's one restriction that makes it challenging. And then you cannot place the same color or the same number next to each other anywhere on the board. That's the other big restriction that makes this game really, really challenging.
It's a doozy, yeah.
There's variable scoring. There's different attributes that will score, whether it's points for every mixed color set you have, or points for none of the same number in a given row, or that kind of thing. And those change out from game to game, basically mixing up. Sagrada has expansions that are not in the app yet, but that's okay. And I think that's the basics of Sagrada, right, Mandy?
Yeah, I think so. And then, there's some personal objectives and things like that throughout the game. But yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
The app, developed by Direwolf Games and just released on iOS and Android and Steam and all that good stuff. Solid work, which honestly, we would expect that from Direwolf. I think Direwolf has proven that they have all the technical and aesthetic and user experience chops. They are board gamers. The owner of Direwolf is the designer of Clank. So these are people who get board games and they get technology. And bringing those two together is great. In Sagrada, the app, it has online play. It has local play where you can pass and play, or where you can play against 3 different levels of AI. There is critically a colorblind mode. Because that is one of the complaints about Sagrada in real life, is that it's not super friendly for people who are severely colorblind.
Right.
But the app, hey, here's an area where technology can help board games. The app has a colorblind mode that you can play. There is a built-in tutorial that will teach you how to play the game. The game itself is not super complex to teach.
Right.
It's one of those easy rules, challenging play kind of games. But there's a tutorial that will teach you how to play the game quite smoothly. You could learn Sagrada from the app, and I'm betting if you learn from the app, you would be able to transfer those skills and knowledge to playing in the physical form quite easily. And one thing the app adds that I just love, a campaign mode with different challenges that escalate as you go. I love that they've added this. I find more board game apps are starting to realize that this is a feature that people enjoy and will take advantage of. Mm-hmm. And Sagrada has it, which is excellent.
I love when I see that in a game because it's just lots of play. You know what I mean? Lots of play that's continuous.
I think a lot of people enjoy games like this on their device casually while they're waiting in line for something or sitting on the sofa and watching a movie with their family, and they've seen the movie 3 times already, so they just want, something else to put their brain power to and that kind of thing. And I think challenge modes or campaign modes are a great solution for that the gameplay, it can take the basic game mechanisms, but keep the gameplay feeling fresh after repetitive plays, which is really great for a solo experience. There are little things in the app that I think they also did well in terms of turn indication. So when you play, you're going to see your window. But hey, if you want to see Mandy's window, just swipe. There's Mandy's window. Swipe back. There's your window again. And on top of the play area, they have a really nice indicator of whose turn it is, because Sagrada is based on a snake draft. So if Mandy drafts first, I draft 2 times in a row, and then it goes back to Mandy, kind of thing. So there's a nice little turn indicator at the top to make it really, really easy to see whose turn it is, which I like. And hey, there's an undo button.
That's always a saving grace. Yes, yes.
Love it. Obviously, not all games can have an undo button, but even games from a gameplay perspective where it really wouldn't matter, they often forget to include it. And I really wish that every app would have an undo, because you can easily mistap on things.
I do it all the time. I'm so rash with my decisions. I'm like, yeah, no, that's not what I meant to do. No. And then I'm like, there's no undo. Well, I'm stuck with it. So yes, undo is one of those things that is a necessity of life. I wish it was actually in life. Undo is good.
I hear you on that. So yeah, Sagrada has an undo button for your turn as well, in case you click on the wrong die or put it in the wrong square that you didn't mean to or something like that. And that's a nice little touch as well that I think just shows the thoughtfulness that they put into the app development overall.
No,
so for me, Sagrada as an app, I enjoy the game in real life, but I gotta say, I really am enjoying this app. I have it on Steam and on iOS, and it plays very smoothly in both scenarios. And Mandy, I would love to play this against you sometime very, very soon.
Oh, that would be a great one. I've been playing it on Android, and it's good. Like, I can see clearly. I played the tutorial. I always play the tutorial in a game I haven't played for a long time, just to see how it runs through and can I pick up on it easily. And it was very clear, very good. So yes, I think this will be an enjoyable one to show. I can't promise that I'll win, but it'll be fun.
So Sagrada, iOS, Android, Steam, check it out.
Suzanne.
Mandy, Suzanne.
Suze. How many games can you fit in a suitcase?
Should I pre-order this game from the Tokyo Game Market?
Can you confirm or deny that deep dish pizza is a type of pie?
And now, the Dice Tower will authoritatively, definitely, possibly,
How do you
maybe
carry all-
answer your questions.
Which way to the Kigurumi party?
All right, well, it's time to pull out the trusty mailbag. I made a blow noise because I feel like, it's been a while. So let's start off and see what's in the mail for us today.
All right, so up from Liz. How do you approach games with mechanisms you dislike? I'm lucky enough to have 2 board gaming groups. Whoa, Liz, nice. I used to meet bi-weekly before the coronavirus hit in the UK. I hope I resume soon. Everyone I play with is awesome, and I always love the table talk. However, one of these groups has very different board gaming tastes from mine. In fact, one of their collective favorite mechanisms is one I get very little from playing: risk-taking economic games. Usually we play one of these each session, and the joke is the game will end when I go bankrupt. I'm that bad. I'd love to be able to get more out of these games because it's so much more fun for everyone that way, but I don't know how to see past the blur mechanism. What do you think, Mandy?
I mean, I get it. And we have to make sure we're making a distinction between things we're bad at or things we dislike, because there are things that I'm bad at in gaming, but I don't dislike them. So let's just throw
Great
that
point.
out there. But yes, there are some that I dislike and am bad at. So I'll maybe take that approach to answer this question. And this is actually something I learned from Tom. Yes, I said it. I learned from
What? Oh gosh, I hope he's not listening.
I know, right? Oh, goodness. So I'm the type of person, I just want to make everybody happy. You know what I mean? Oh, you know what? It's not really my thing, but I'll play it anyway, suffer through it. You go to a convention and people want to play a certain game and you just want to make people happy. But in the end, you're making yourself unhappy. Therefore, you're not creating a very good environment for yourself or for anyone else. And Tom's like, then don't play those games. He literally has just said, then don't. It's best to be very upfront and honest. You know what? This is not a mechanic I care for or that I like. How about we play something that works for everybody? And I think that's a really good way to do it. Just be straightforward, because if you try and do it my way by pleasing people, it doesn't work out for you, for them, and then you really start to dislike it, and then you can feel that tension. So it's just one of those cases of just being really straightforward and maybe finding a consensus within that group where maybe you don't like a certain thing, they don't like a certain thing, but find something in the middle that you can play. And that's like me. I have several game groups that I play with because I know, for example, Suze, we were talking about Millennium Blades. That's a game that I love, but I would say 4 out of my 5 game groups don't love it. So I kind of have to just back shelf that until I can get to that game group. So this is where even expanding game groups might also help you. But in that particular one, maybe just have to find something that works for all of you. So just be upfront and honest. That's all I can say for that one. What about you, Suze?
I totally agree. And finding that if they're friends and not just people that you consistently meet up with to play games, if that distinction makes a difference,
Yeah, absolutely.
they should care. They should care that you're not enjoying yourself in that type of game. And hey, maybe not every time. Maybe you play 1 per game night. Or if it's a longer game, maybe not every game night needs to have that type.
Right.
And hopefully they value your friendship and presence enough that they'll be able to adjust and play those games in other ways. Because I know certainly I don't enjoy memory-based games at all. And it would be kind of a bummer if I had to play a bunch of memory games every game night with a group of people I really enjoyed normally. So, I feel your pain, Liz.
Absolutely. All right, Wayne says, my 9-year-old son is in lockdown like many other kids around the country due to COVID-19. He wants to play some online games with his friends on his iPad, but don't know of any that are kid-friendly for online play, meaning you can control who they're playing with and not random people, looking for games. I thought that given, Apptastic and Tap That App on the show, that we could provide some insight on that. So any thoughts? And this might be helpful for other parents as well. Stay safe. So I'm going to throw that to you, Suze, because you have children. You might have a little bit more on this. So what do you think?
Yeah, it's a great question, Wayne, and something that I'm very cautious about as well in terms of when I let my children be online. I want to know who they're talking to, who they're interacting with, that kind of thing. I look at games that they play on, like the Nintendo Switch. And my son's super into Pokemon. Mm-hmm. As so many kids are. And I had to investigate. Okay, you can trade with strangers, but you can't talk to strangers. They can send like little emotes, like pre-canned emotes or things like that, kind of like in Hearthstone, where you have reactions that you can give, but ultimately somebody can't send weird things to your kiddos, and your kiddos can't accidentally reveal too much personal information, that kind of thing. So I totally get where you're coming from. The good news is most board game apps that are developed on iOS and Android that have online play have the ability to play with a friend. Unfortunately, they all have different systems based on this. Some, like a lot of the Asmodee digital games, like Ticket to Ride or Mysterium, they all use a common shared online base, friend base. So once you create an account, that account can be used in any of their games. Similarly, with digitized games, once you create a digitized account, Patchwork, Le Havre, Inland Port, or Terra Mystica, that kind of thing, it's all the same base, but there's no, like, they don't cross over, right? Or if you have a playdeck game, you can have that account, but they don't cross over. So you might have to have a couple of online accounts with different services depending on the games that you like.
Right.
But the good news is you can set it up so that your kiddo is only playing with other people that they know, as long as those other people are also setting up accounts. And then you set up a friend relationship. This is how it works in Star Realms, right? I have people that I play with consistently, and I have them marked as a friend, and then I can challenge just them. You do not have to open up to random play. Quite frankly, that works on some of the web services that people are learning to explore now as well, like Board Game Arena. You can absolutely play with a bunch of strangers, but you can also absolutely limit it to just people that you know and friend accounts. And it's even more important on Board Game Arena because there's open chat on Board Game Arena, right? But there's a lot of really fun games as well. So overall, as long as you have a trusting relationship with your kiddo and you're setting it up so that their friends are, setting up known friend accounts, and then you set up that friend relationship digitally, then most of the games with online play lets you limit it to just friends that you know.
No, that's really detailed, and that's great. I don't even think I have anything to to add to that. I think you've covered all the bases, and I don't think I'm going to add anything else. So, no, there you go. Some great ideas.
Okay, and Mary Lou writes in and asks, I finally broke down and bought a Nintendo Switch because I really need something to entertain me right now. I already picked up Animal Crossing. Woo! Mandy. But I definitely want some board games that I could play with friends. What games do you recommend? Now, Mandy, I know that you've been only playing Animal Crossing and you'll never play any other games ever again on the Nintendo Switch.
Not for a while.
But do you have any board games on the Switch?
I do. So before we even jump into that, and I'm going to say this one, because even though it's not a board game, it feels like it is a board game, but Slay the Spire, which you directed me to, has that vibe of, like deck builder, that sort of thing. So for me, I'd feel, if it's not, though, it's like a technical board game, but it has that vibe. So that's what I'm going to throw out there. And thank you for suggesting that. It is awesome. I have Carcassonne. I have Istanbul. I think I also have, Raiders of the North Sea. I have a few, actually, now that I think. I don't have it in front of me. These are just offhand. But I have a lot of the main ones that are available.
And I think that that's the challenge with the Switch. And we've talked about this in the past in other episodes as well. But we haven't really ever had a comprehensive list. And right now, it's not a long list for board game specifics. What I wanted to add is that there's a little game called Flip Over Frog, which has a physical game, but also has a Switch app, which is really, really cool. And Wingspan has been announced as coming out on the Switch. It's just not out yet. And Charterstone, which is now out on like iOS and Android and Steam. The Switch version isn't out yet, but they have announced it. So hopefully it's coming very, very soon since it's already out on the other platforms. The Switch is a developing platform. I think that publishers are just realizing the power of board games on the Switch.
Right.
I think the Switch is a great platform, especially if you're playing handheld, because you have the touchscreen option. So it gives some additional controls that even board gaming on like an Xbox or PlayStation doesn't apply. So I think publishers are really realizing that and are going to take more advantage of it in the future. But right now, the selection is a little limited.
Yeah, and I think it's...
That said...
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there. I was just so excited with your talk about Nintendo Switch. I was saying it's nice to have it in one spot. Do you know what I mean? Like, I have an Xbox, I have a Switch, but it's great to just... I have my phone, but if you can get it all in one shot and I can take that with me, and it's a bigger screen than my phone, I think that's great. So I'm hoping they push forward with board games. Sorry, I just wanted to jump in with that.
No, not at all. And the only other things I wanted to point out is that there are 2 games that I know of that are board game like, similar to Slay the Spire, actually, Mandy, but that board gamers might not be familiar with because they don't exist in physical form. But there's a game called Frost.
Oh, okay.
That is essentially a solo play kind of deck builder where you're trudging through like a frosty thing and you're going to hit encounters that you have to clear. And it's a deck management, hand management thing where you have to pay cards out of your hand to cross these barriers. But sometimes you have to do some resource exchange and planning ahead and that kind of thing. There's a countdown clock that you're dealing with, that kind of thing. It's really enjoyable. I like it. I find it challenging, and that is also on the Switch.
I'm writing this down, by the way. Frost, you say?
Frost, yes. And it's got this all white kind of, it's very bright and white and kind of, it's got a cool aesthetic to it.
Okay, adding to the repertoire. Continue, I'm sorry.
Not at all. And there's a game called Sumer, Sumer, that is a resource exchange game, but it combines kind of a traditional board game. It's set in an Egypt-like location where you're jumping around different levels of what could be a pyramid, and you're collecting, okay, I'm going to get 2 wheat here and 2 clay there, and I have to exchange them over there to get the water holder that I need, that kind of thing. But there is a real-time element to it because it's an action game where you have to physically run around. You have a little character on the screen, and they're running around. They have to run to the water station and do that thing at the water station. And then they have to run over to the brick station and do the thing over at the brick station. And there's kind of this added frenetic energy of combining a board game with an action platforming game.
It's kind of fun.
I find it exceptionally challenging. That action thing is really challenging for me, but I really enjoy the game. And I think for board gamers, it's something at least worth checking out that you may not have otherwise known about, because again, it doesn't exist in a physical form. It wouldn't. Another great example where technology and analog gaming kind of can meet and create something kind of magical.
Absolutely.
So Frost and Sumer are the 2 other little tips I have for you in terms of quote unquote board gaming on the Switch.
Nice. I'm adding more to the list. Stop it. Stop it.
You just said you wanted more. You like one-stop shops. I can't win.
I said that, but you're supposed to say no more. I'll stop talking about it. So, because now it's just it's out of control.
I will stop talking about it now. All right, everybody. We are actually going to call that an episode. I know it was a short one today. Like I said at the top of the show, a little bit of a transition episode for us. Thank you so much for sticking with us and being patient as we make our own kind of give and take as far as how we figure this out. We've got a couple of ideas for how we're going to adjust the podcast as we adjust our game playing habits over the next week. So thank you for putting up with us on that. Hopefully we have a couple of little surprises that will be fun for you to listen to. We will be doing more Q&A. We're doing them live on the Dice Tower every once in a while on YouTube, but we also obviously answer questions on the podcast. If you have a question about digital gaming, obviously we've been talking about a lot, but anything, whatever questions you have about gaming, feel free to send them to us. You can reach me at Suzanne@dicetower.com.
And you can reach me at Mandy, that's Mandy with an I, at dicetower.com.
As always, we are so grateful that we get to be here and talk about our love of gaming with you and be part of the greater Dice Tower family. We hope you are doing well. We know that this is a challenging time for so many of us and appreciate that gaming can be an escape for us all. So turn to games, turn to family, turn to popcorn and snacks and soda and binge watching something on Netflix if you have to. Just take care of yourself in this hard, difficult time.
Absolutely.
Next episode, 655. Tom and Eric will be talking about their favorite games from 20 years ago.
Oh my.
Which was the year 2000.
Wait, in the year 2000. Huh?
Thank you.
Huh?
Beautiful. Mwah. Magnifique. Which I just can't get over the idea of 2000 being 20 years ago and the whole Y2K thing. Oh my goodness. Time flies.
Sure does.
But until next time, I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Mandy Hutchinson.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Basil Memorial Fund is an organization dedicated to helping gamers in need. Learn more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackbasil.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Suzanne, Mandy, and Eric with assistance from Roy Canaday and Rob Searing. Our theme is composed by Timothy Pinkham and arranged by Matt Bellier, and hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at dicetower@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. All right, it's that time again. 2 truths and a lie. And before I forget, because I did the first time we did this, we had some discussion about things we were doing during the quarantine. So this is what our 2 truths and a lie from last episode were in relation to. So here we go. I'm up first. During the quarantine, I've built up an Animal Crossing community. I've sewn a new dress, and I've worked out every day. If you've chosen I've sewn a new dress as the lie, that would be correct. Unfortunately, I've been so busy playing Animal Crossing in my little community and working out, I just haven't had time to sew that new dress. But I will. What about you, Suze?
I think you're still going to have time. During quarantine, I have hung up a bunch of art. I've picked up some old crafts, and I've thoroughly reorganized my office. And the lie is that I've reorganized my office. Oh my gosh, I really want to, I really need to, but it is still, sadly, a mess.
It's painful. I get it. All right, and new ones for you to ponder. Here we go. We've got a theme going on. I like pineapple on my pizza. I like pepperoni on my pizza. I like feta cheese on my pizza.
And for me, I like pineapple on my pizza. I like pepperoni on my pizza, and I like mushrooms on my pizza.
Oh, this is making me so hungry. Yum, yum, yum. Okay, everyone, good luck.